Today, we're diving into the smallest coin in your pocket, but don't let its size fool you. The US 1-cent penny has a huge history, fascinating facts, and even a few rare versions worth way more than 1 cent. Top 1. Have you ever picked up a penny off the ground and thought, it's just 1 cent? It's probably something we've all done. That small copper coin, often tossed in jars, found between couch cushions, or used to even out change, doesn't seem like much until it is. Because somewhere in the world, there's a single penny, a rare one from 1974, that might just be worth up to $63,000. That's right, $63,000 for 1 cent. But how is that even possible? Today, we're going deep into the fascinating story of one of America's most iconic coins, the 1974 1-cent penny. And this isn't just a tale about a coin. This is a story of politics, economics, mystery metals, and collectors willing to pay more for a single penny than most of us would spend on a brand new car. Let's rewind the clock. It's the early 1970s. The Vietnam War is winding down, inflation is on the rise, and the cost of raw materials is putting serious pressure on the US Mint. For decades, the penny had been made primarily from copper, 95% copper, to be exact, with the rest made up of zinc. But copper prices were soaring. By 1973, the cost of producing a single penny was approaching, and in some cases exceeding, its face value. That's a problem. The government couldn't justify spending more than 1 cent to produce a 1-cent coin. So, in 1974, the US Mint did something radical. They decided to experiment. The Mint began testing alternative metals for the penny, cheaper options that would bring production costs back in line. One of the leading candidates was aluminum. Lightweight, inexpensive, and readily available, aluminum seemed like a perfect solution. In total, the Mint struck more than 1.5 million 1974 aluminum pennies as test pieces. These weren't meant for circulation, but they were real coins, officially minted, with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. They looked just like the copper pennies we're used to, but were feather-light and had a pale silver tone that gave them a strange, futuristic appearance. Here's where it gets interesting. The US Mint sent samples of the aluminum penny to Congress, seeking approval for full-scale production. The response? Less than enthusiastic. Pediatricians raised health concerns, warning that if children swallowed an aluminum penny, it might not show up on an X-ray. Coin-operated machine manufacturers, like those making vending machines and payphones, protested, saying their devices were calibrated for the weight and conductivity of copper coins. Switching to aluminum would be costly and chaotic. By the end of 1974, the idea was dead. The aluminum penny experiment was over. Now, here's where the plot thickens. Even though the Mint had struck more than 1 million aluminum pennies, they ordered that all of them be melted down and destroyed. As far as official records show, every single one was accounted for, except for a few that weren't. It's believed that some of these aluminum pennies were never returned. A handful had been given to members of Congress, possibly as souvenirs, and somehow, maybe by accident, maybe not, they slipped through the cracks. Today, only a few confirmed examples of the 1974 aluminum penny are known to exist, and even those are the subject of legal and ownership battles between collectors and the US government. Now let's focus on one very specific coin, an infamous specimen struck at the San Diego Mint and discovered decades later by the son of a former US Mint employee. That single penny made headlines when it was appraised at a staggering $250,000, but legal disputes quickly followed, and the coin was ultimately returned to the US government. Another version of the 1974 penny, however, made of standard bronze but with a rare error or mint variation, has sold for as much as $63,000 at auction. Let that sink in. A penny, the kind that most people overlook or discard, valued at $63,000. But why? What makes a coin like this so valuable? In numismatics, or the study of currency, a coin's value is determined by 4 major factors: rarity, condition, historical significance, and demand. The 1974 penny checks all those boxes. First, rarity. The vast majority of 1974 pennies were minted in copper and zinc, as usual. But only a tiny number, fewer than a dozen aluminum examples escape destruction. That scarcity makes it highly desirable. Second, condition. Collectors and investors look for coins in pristine, uncirculated condition. A penny that's been in circulation for 50 years is going to be worn, scratched, and dull. But a rare 1974 specimen preserved in a sealed vault or forgotten in a government envelope for decades, that coin might still gleam. And if it's been officially graded and assigned a high rating, say, MS 67 or above, it becomes exponentially more valuable. Third, historical significance. The 1974 aluminum penny represents a major moment in American coinage history. It tells a story of economic pressure, government innovation, and a rare misstep by the US Mint. It's a what-if artifact. What if the penny had changed forever? And finally, demand. That's perhaps the most powerful factor. When collectors and investors compete for a rare item at auction, the price can skyrocket. Even a common penny can become a treasure if two or more people decide they have to have it. So when a nearly flawless 1974 penny, struck in a test alloy or featuring a rare mint error, hits the market, it's not just a coin. It's a relic. It's a conversation piece. It's a headline. It's a $63,000 penny. Imagine holding that in your hand. A coin that looks no different than the rest, but hidden in its atomic structure and historical context lies a value that could change someone's life. And here's the twist: there may still be others out there. Yes, that's right. There could still be 1974 aluminum pennies in attics, junk drawers, inherited coin collections, or even sitting in a child's piggy bank. Most people wouldn't know what to look for. The average person glancing at a pale-looking penny from the 1970s might assume it's just worn down or tarnished. But to the trained eye, or the lucky hand, it could be a jackpot. That's why coin hunting has become such a huge trend online. Videos of people digging through rolls of pennies from the back, hoping to find a wheat penny, an error coin, or one of these rare aluminum specimens, rack up millions of views. There's something thrilling about the idea that treasure is hiding in plain sight. And here's a secret that many experienced collectors won't tell you: pennies, as boring as they might seem, are often where the most exciting discoveries happen. That's because they're so common, so overlooked. But in that pile of copper and zinc, there could be a mint error worth thousands. There's also something poetic about the penny. It's the coin of the people. The one that anyone, no matter their background, can afford. It's passed from hand to hand, from register to tip jar to vending machine. It's Lincoln's face, looking off into the distance, reminding us of where we've come from. And for some lucky person, it might also represent where they're going, into a brighter financial future. So the next time you get change at the store, take a moment. Look at the date. Flip it over. Run your finger along the edge. You might not find a 1974 aluminum penny, but you might just start a new hobby. Or spark a curiosity that leads you into the incredible world of coin collecting, where history, economics, art, and treasure hunting all collide. Collectors have a saying: every coin has a story, and the story of the 1974 1-cent penny. That's one of the best, from its experimental birth at the US Mint, to the halls of Congress, to courtroom battles and headline auctions, to whispered rumors of lost specimens still out there in the wild. It's a tale that blends secrecy, value, and discovery. And the price tag? As high as $63,000 for just one coin. So, check your change, because one day, that small, shiny penny might not just be 1 cent. It might be the coin that changes everything. Top 2. There's a saying in the coin collecting world: look closely. The smallest things can hold the biggest surprises. And no coin represents that idea better than the humble American penny. Most of us barely think twice about it. We toss it in the change jar. Drop it on the ground and don't bother to pick it up. A single cent doesn't seem like much. But every once in a while, one of those small copper coins turns out to be worth a fortune. Today, we're telling the story of one such coin, the legendary 1975 1-cent penny, a coin so rare and mysterious that one example has sold for as much as $58,000. That's right, $58,000. For a single penny.so, how does something so common suddenly become so valuable? The answer lies in a strange convergence of minting errors, historical timing, and numismatic curiosity. But first, let's step back and talk about what was happening in America during the mid-1970s. The year was 1975. The country was still reeling from the effects of the Vietnam War, and President Gerald Ford was in office trying to restore public trust after the Watergate scandal. Inflation was high. Gas prices were unstable. The economy was uncertain. And even the smallest things, like the cost of metals used in coinage, were under scrutiny. For decades, the US penny had been minted using a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc. But copper prices were rising fast, and by the mid-1970s, it was starting to cost more to make a penny than the penny itself was worth. Sound familiar? That's the same issue that led to the experimental aluminum pennies in 1974. But those were mostly destroyed after Congress rejected the plan. In 1975, the US Mint continued producing pennies in the usual copper-based alloy, but behind the scenes, they were watching the market closely, wondering how long the system could hold, and then something unexpected happened. A small number of 1975 pennies began showing up with unusual characteristics. They weren't official mint test pieces. They weren't intentionally different. But sharp-eyed collectors started noticing strange things: slight misalignments, off-metal strikes, double dice, and in one incredibly rare case, a composition anomaly that made the coin distinct from any regular penny of the time. That's where the story of the $58,000 penny begins. This wasn't just any coin. It was a 1975 penny that, at first glance, looked like all the rest. But under closer inspection, experts realized it was a mistake, an error coin, struck on the wrong planchet, with a weight and metal composition different from what was standard. Error coins can happen at any mint. A planchet from a different denomination, say, a dime or foreign coin, can accidentally find its way into the penny press. When that happens, the design of the penny gets stamped onto a piece of metal it was never meant to be on. These coins slip through quality control, get released into circulation, and disappear into the pockets and piggy banks of ordinary people. Most error coins are caught quickly, but once in a while, one slips out, and if it survives, and gets discovered decades later, it can become a sensation. The 1975 1-cent error penny that reached $58,000 was one of those rare survivors. Found in pristine condition, it bore the familiar image of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But it weighed slightly less than a normal penny. It rang differently when dropped. Under microscopic examination, the surface showed unusual qualities, subtle indicators that it was struck on the wrong metal. Some experts believe it may have been struck on a foreign planchet, possibly intended for use in another country's coinage. Others suggest it was a transitional error, produced as the mint was testing or adjusting its machinery. What's clear is this: it was not supposed to exist, and that's what makes coins like this so incredibly valuable, because when you combine historical timing, rarity, and mystery, you create the perfect storm of numismatic demand. Collectors want the story. They want the oddity. They want the piece of history that no one else has. But that's just one piece of the 1975 penny puzzle. There are other varieties from that year that have also attracted huge attention, particularly coins featuring double dice, off-center strikes, and clip planchets. A double die happens when the coin die shifts slightly during the hubbing process, causing a duplicated image. On the 1975 penny, some of these doubling errors are especially noticeable around the date, the word liberty, or the motto, "In God We Trust." Off-center strikes are another favorite among collectors. These are coins that weren't perfectly aligned during the minting process. Depending on how far off-center the strike is, these coins can fetch hundreds or even thousands of dollars, especially if the date is still visible and the coin remains in good condition. Then there's the clip planchet error, where part of the coin is literally missing, because the metal blank was improperly cut. These errors are easy to spot, and while they're not as rare as off-metal errors, a 1975 penny with a dramatic clip and high grade can still command a significant price. So if you've got a jar of old pennies lying around, 1975 is a year worth checking, but here's what makes the 1975 penny so fascinating from a collector's perspective. It's a year that doesn't seem special at first glance. It wasn't a major anniversary. It didn't feature a design change. It was minted in enormous quantities. Over 5.4 billion pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint alone, with millions more coming out of Denver and San Francisco. In fact, that's part of the magic, because when a year is so ordinary, when it's flooded with coins, no one thinks to look twice. And that's exactly how rare specimens slip through unnoticed. You might think that the US Mint is flawless, that every coin is inspected and verified. But in truth, the sheer volume of coins produced, especially in the 1970s, meant that a few errors were inevitable. And when one of those errors turns out to be unique, well-preserved, and wrapped in a layer of historical intrigue, it becomes more than a mistake. It becomes an object of desire, and desire drives price. That's how we arrive at a penny valued at $58,000. It was found, authenticated, and graded by a professional coin grading service, which assigned it an exceptional rating, one of the highest ever given to a coin from that year. With interest from collectors and investors, the coin went up for auction. What followed was a bidding war that stunned even veteran numismatists. People were willing to pay luxury car prices for a single cent. It makes you wonder how many other rare pennies are out there, sitting unnoticed in change drawers, or tossed in donation jars, or forgotten in dusty collections. That's why coin collecting has become more popular than ever. In the age of digital everything, there's something thrilling about holding history in your hand, something physical, tangible, and filled with stories. Every coin has a story. The 1975 penny tells a story of transition, uncertainty, and overlooked value. It's a symbol of a moment in time, when inflation and economics pushed the boundaries of the mint's operations, and when one tiny mistake led to a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. For some collectors, this penny is a trophy. For others, it's a puzzle. And for everyone who hears its story, it's a reminder that greatness sometimes hides in the most ordinary places. You don't need to be a millionaire to find treasure. All you need is a keen eye, a little patience, and a willingness to look closely. So what should you be looking for? If you come across a 1975 penny, the first thing to check is the mint mark. Most were minted in Philadelphia and Denver. San Francisco pennies were proof coins, not intended for circulation, and often have the sharpest detail. These are less likely to show major errors, but if they do, those errors can be especially valuable. Next, look at the weight. A normal 1975 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If yours weighs significantly less, it could be an off-metal strike. If it weighs more, you might have something unusual as well. Look at the color and luster. An aluminum or steel coin will look noticeably different from standard copper. It may be lighter in color, or even magnetic. Unusual patterns can also indicate a strange composition. Use a magnifying glass to examine the lettering. Double dice are often most visible around the words Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. Even a slight doubling can increase a coin's value, but strong, well-centered doubling can turn a coin into a collector's dream. And of course, look at the shape. Is it round? Does it have a full rim? Are there clipped edges or signs of misalignment? These visual cues can often tell you more than any weight or measurement ever could. The beauty of coins like the 1975 penny is that they invite us to look closer, not just at the coin, but at the world it came from. The texture of the metal, the sharpness of the stripe, the subtle imperfections all speak to a. Top 3. There's something strange about a penny. It's the lowest denomination in American currency, often overlooked, often underappreciated. Most of us pass it by without a second thought. We let them gather in jars, roll under car seats, drop into tip cups at the corner store. It's just a penny, after all. But once in a while, one of those tiny coins holds a secret, one that transforms it from pocket change into a numismatic treasure. And in the case of the 1983 US 1-cent coin, that secret could be worth up to $68,000. A single penny. Not a rare gold coin, not a silver dollar, not even a century-old relic. Just a penny minted in 1983, modern enough that you could easily mistake it for the one in your wallet right now. But make no mistake, this is one of the most mysterious and exciting coins in American currency history. To understand why, you have to go back a few years before 1983. The early 1980s were a turbulent time for coin production in the United States. Inflation was high, and the price of copper, used heavily in minting pennies, was rising quickly. By the end of the 1970s, the cost of making a 1-cent coin had crept dangerously close to 1 cent itself. For the US Mint, this was an unsustainable situation. In 1982, the Mint made a major change. They shifted the composition of the penny from mostly copper to a core of zinc, plated with a thin layer of copper. This reduced the cost of production and lightened the coin's weight. The change was subtle to the average eye, but to coin collectors and numismatists, it was a seismic shift. For the first time in decades, two completely different metal compositions were used within the same year. That meant two types of 1982 pennies existed, copper and zinc. And both looked nearly identical. The chaos of the transition year set the stage for what would come next. In 1983, the new zinc composition was supposed to be fully implemented. There was no reason for a copper penny to be struck again. But somehow, somewhere, a mistake occurred. A small number of 1983 pennies were struck using copper planchets, the leftover blanks from 1982. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't announced. It wasn't caught. But they made it out into the world, indistinguishable to the casual observer but carrying an enormous secret weight, literally, because while a zinc penny from 1983 weighs about 2.5 grams, a copper one weighs 3.11 grams. That difference of just over half a gram changed everything. It turned an ordinary penny into a $68,000 prize. How did anyone find out? As is so often the case in the world of rare coins, it started with someone paying close attention. A collector happened to weigh a 1983 penny out of curiosity, perhaps while hunting for rare 1982 variations. But what they discovered shocked the entire coin collecting world: a 1983 penny that weighed the same as a pre-1982 copper version. It wasn't supposed to exist. And yet, there it was. Professional grading services confirmed the find. They verified the composition. They ruled out forgeries. This was real. From that moment, the 1983 copper penny became legend. There were only a few known to exist, and they were all struck in Philadelphia, where pennies do not carry a mint mark. It's believed that the leftover copper blanks were mistakenly fed into the minting machines during early 1983 production. The result? A ghost coin. An unintentional survivor of a previous ERA.AT auction. One of these pennies, certified authentic and graded in excellent condition, sold for a staggering $68,000. It was the kind of price normally reserved for ancient gold or historical silver dollars. Yet here it was, a copper coin from 1983 fetching enough money to buy a luxury car. Shook the numismatic world to its core, but that wasn't the only story 1983 had to tell. That year also produced another anomaly, something that continues to puzzle collectors to this day: the 1983 doubled die reverse penny. Doubled dies occur during the minting process when a die, the tool used to strike the coin, is misaligned or shifted slightly between impressions. The result is that parts of the design appear doubled, usually most noticeable in the lettering or numbers. In the 1983 doubled die reverse penny, the doubling appears most clearly on the words 1 cent and United States of America. It's not just a minor variation. The doubling is dramatic, obvious even without magnification. And that's rare. When one of these coins surfaced in pristine, uncirculated condition, collectors knew they were looking at something special. Prices for well-preserved examples have soared into the thousands, tens of thousands in the highest grades. A perfect specimen with both the doubling and copper composition could theoretically fetch even more than the famous $68,000 sale. That's the thing about coin collecting. The deeper you dig, the more fascinating the stories become. The 1983 penny represents a kind of modern mystery. It's recent enough to feel familiar, yet rare enough to ignite obsession. Unlike older coins that gain value through age and historic significance, the 1983 penny's value is tied to error, chance, and survival. It wasn't supposed to be special, but that's exactly what makes it so. And here's the most incredible part: there could be more out there. Yes, right now, there may be more 1983 copper pennies sitting in penny jars, old purses, or forgotten coin rolls, completely unnoticed. That's why collectors and treasure hunters continue to sift through thousands of coins, searching for that magic combination of weight and date, because it's not just about luck. It's about knowledge. It's about understanding what to look for. If you want to search for a valuable 1983 penny yourself, here's what to do. Start by checking the weight. A standard 1983 zinc penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If yours weighs closer to 3.1 grams, you may be looking at a copper planchet error. You'll need a precise digital scale to tell the difference. Second, inspect the reverse lettering. Use a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe. Look closely at the words 1 cent and United States of America. If you see strong, clear doubling, you may have a double die reverse, a highly desirable error coin. Third, examine the coin's surface and edges. A sharp stripe, smooth fields, and uncirculated luster can dramatically increase value. Coins with scratches, corrosion, or heavy wear will be worth less, even if they're rare. And finally, if you think you've found something extraordinary, don't rush to sell it. Send it to a professional coin grading service like PCGS or NGC. A certified grade and authentication will give buyers confidence and might turn a good find into a life-changing discovery. The $68,000 penny was once just another coin in someone's pocket. No one knew its value. No one guessed its origin. But it was there, waiting to be recognized. That's what keeps this hobby alive. The possibility. The hunt. The idea that the most ordinary-looking object might hold extraordinary value. It's not just about the money. It's about the history, the science, the thrill of solving a decades-old puzzle. Coins like the 1983 penny connect us to a living history. Every scratch, every imperfection, every deviation from the standard tells a story. It reminds us that even machines make mistakes. That even in the most tightly controlled processes, human oversight, randomness, and chance still play a role. Maybe that's why people are still captivated by coins. Not just because they're currency, but because they're a mirror. A reflection of who we were, who we are, and how even the smallest errors can ripple through time in the most unexpected ways. So the next time you see a penny lying on the ground, don't just walk past it. Pick it up. Look at the date. Feel its weight in your hand. It might not just be 1 cent. It might be $68,000. Or it might just be the first step into a world you never knew existed. A world of history hidden in plain sight. A world where a single penny can tell 1,000 stories, and one of them might be yours. Top 4. It's the coin we barely notice, the one that jingles quietly in our pockets, sits forgotten in kitchen drawers, or ends up tossed into fountains without a second thought. But what if I told you that one of those tiny, ordinary coins, the kind you might overlook or step over on the sidewalk, could be worth $52,000? That's not a typo. $52,000 for a penny, specifically, a 1985 United States 1 cent coin. It looks just like every other penny struck in the 1980s. It's small, it's copper-colored, it has Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But there's something about one rare version of this coin that makes it different. Something you can see at first glance. Something that slipped past the mint's watchful eye. And that's exactly why it became so valuable. This is the story of one of the most mysterious and underappreciated coins in modern American history. The 1985 penny. A coin that hides a secret capable of turning 1 cent into a life-changing windfall. To understand why this coin matters, you have to understand what was happening in the early to mid-1980s at the United States Mint. Back in 1982, the Mint made a dramatic change in the composition of the penny. For nearly a century, pennies had been made mostly of copper. But inflation was changing everything. The cost of copper had skyrocketed. It was getting too expensive to make a penny that was literally worth more as scrap metal than as currency. So in the middle of 1982, the Mint switched from solid copper pennies to pennies made of zinc with a thin copper coating. From that moment on, the classic copper penny became a thing of the past. Pennies from 1983 onward were supposed to be entirely zinc-based. But as any coin expert will tell you, anytime there's a major change at the mint, strange things can happen, and that's exactly what happened in 1985. The majority of 1985 pennies were minted with the new zinc composition. They weighed 2.5 grams, they had the same design as previous years, and they were pumped out by the billions. Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, all three major mints produced huge numbers of these coins, but as the coins were being struck, something unexpected occurred. Some of the coins came out wrong, not obviously wrong, not laughably wrong. They didn't have holes punched through them or missing faces. These were subtle errors, imperfections, anomalies, tiny deviations from the norm that most people would never notice. But to a trained eye, or a lucky collector, those small differences meant everything. Among the rarest and most valuable errors was a 1985 penny struck on a copper planchet. That's right, even though the mint had officially stopped using copper 3 years earlier, at least one penny somehow ended up being struck using the old material, whether it was a leftover blank from the pre-1983 era, a foreign planchet mistakenly mixed in, or a simple slip of human error. No one knows for sure. What we do know is this: it shouldn't exist, but it does, and when that one copper-based 1985 penny was found, weighed, and authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the coin-collecting world. Experts confirmed it was genuine. The coin weighed 3.11 grams, significantly heavier than its zinc counterparts, and the composition matched that of the earlier, discontinued copper coins. This was no ordinary penny. Soon, the penny was sent to a major coin grading service, where it was officially certified and assigned a high mint state grade. And when it hit the auction block, the bidding was intense. What started as a simple 1-cent piece sold for a stunning $52,000. It wasn't just the composition that made this coin valuable. It was the combination of factors: rarity, error, condition, and historical timing. A coin like this wasn't supposed to leave the mint. But one did. And now, it lives on as one of the most talked about modern pennies in the entire hobby. But that's just the beginning of what makes 1985 pennies fascinating. That year also produced several additional errors that continue to captivate collectors. There are off-center strikes, where the coin is misaligned during the pressing process. There are die cracks and cuts, where parts of the die break down and leave raised bumps or lines on the finished coin. There are double dice coins where the design appears doubled, giving the lettering or date a ghost-like echo. Some of these errors are worth hundreds. Some are worth thousands. And in rare cases, like that copper penny, the price soars into the tens of thousands. Let's talk about how this happens. The US Mint produces billions of coins every year. Each coin must be perfectly cut, struck, and inspected before it enters circulation. But when you're working at that scale, mistakes are inevitable. A single misfeed of a blank planchet, a tiny shift in a die, or a momentary lapse in human oversight can create a coin that's unique. Those unique coins, the ones that aren't supposed to exist, are where real value hides. And the best part, many of them are still out there. The rare 1985 copper penny wasn't pulled from a museum. It wasn't part of some private collection handed down through generations. It was discovered by someone looking closely. Someone who cared enough to notice that the coin they were holding felt just a bit heavier than the rest. That's why collectors always check the weight first. A copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams. A zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams. That 0.6 gram difference is everything. If you're serious about searching, all you need is a good digital scale and a lot of patience. But even if you never find the mythical copper 1985 penny, there are still other rare finds to look for. Some of the most valuable error coins are those that come from minor mishaps that escape detection. Look for doubling in the date or in the letters Liberty and In God We Trust. Search for coins where parts of the design seem thicker or shadowed. These are often clues that something went wrong in the die-making process. Also pay attention to the mint mark. In 1985, pennies from Philadelphia carried no mint mark. Denver pennies had a small D, and San Francisco proof pennies bore an S. While most of the high-value errors come from Philadelphia or Denver, even San Francisco-proof pennies can carry rare die varieties or imperfections that raise their value. It's also important to check the coin's condition. A coin that's worn down, scratched, or discolored won't fetch nearly as much as one in pristine condition. Coins that are bright, shiny, and sharp, those are the ones collectors go crazy for. That's why so many rare coins are found in old bank rolls, coin albums, or mint sets that were never touched by circulation. The coin that sold for $52,000. It wasn't just rare. It was beautiful. Almost perfect. That level of preservation, combined with its one-of-a-kind error, made it irresistible to collectors. But the story of the 1985 penny is more than just a tale of money and metal. It's a reminder of how easy it is to overlook something extraordinary. A reminder that value can hide in the most unexpected places. And perhaps most of all, it's a reminder that history is never really behind us, it's right there, waiting to be discovered in your pocket, in a drawer, or behind the counter at your local store. Every coin tells a story. Some tell the story of a country, a president, or a moment in time. Others tell the story of a mistake, an accident that became a treasure. The 1985 penny tells both. It tells the story of a nation in transition, adjusting its currency to meet economic demands. And it tells the story of a single copper planchet, out of place, forgotten, and pressed into a coin it was never meant to be. And that's what makes it magic, because the most amazing part. There could be more. No one knows exactly how many 1985 copper pennies made it into circulation. It could be 1. It could be 3. It could be 10. Every collector hopes there's another one out there, waiting to be found. That's why people keep searching. That's why they keep looking through coin rolls, checking pocket change, flipping through boxes at yard sales, because the next $52,000 penny. It might not be in a museum. It might be in your hand. Top 5. It's the smallest coin in your pocket. The one that slides between couch cushions, falls behind car seats, ends up forgotten in drawers, tossed in jars, ignored at checkout counters. It's just a penny, 1 cent. You've probably passed hundreds without giving them a second glance. But what if I told you that one of those little copper coins, minted in 1995, is worth $46,000, yes, $46,000. Not a gold coin. Not a silver dollar. Not a coin from centuries past. Just a 1 cent penny, barely 30 years old, hiding in plain sight, indistinguishable at first glance from the rest. But with one powerful difference, one mistake that turned it from spare change into a collector's dream. This is the incredible story of the 1995 US 1 cent penny. A coin that looks ordinary. A coin that slipped past thousands of eyes unnoticed. A coin with a secret worth more than many people's cars, or even a year's salary. And today, we're diving deep into everything that makes this coin one of the most exciting modern US coins ever minted. To understand how a 1995 penny could possibly command such a high price, you need to know a little about how coins are made, and how things sometimes go very, very wrong. The year was 1995. The internet was still young. Bill Clinton was in his first term as president. Gas was about $1.15 a gallon. Toy Story hadn't come out yet. The world was changing rapidly, and technology was starting to touch everything, even the US Mint. That year, billions of Lincoln cents were struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. On the surface, they were no different from the coins minted in 1994 or 1996. They featured Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The composition was standard for modern cents, a zinc core with a thin copper plating, weighing just 2.5 grams. In total, the US Mint produced over 6 billion of these pennies. You'd think, with that kind of scale, every coin would be identical. But that's the thing about volume: when you're producing billions of something, perfection is nearly impossible. And it was in that sea of mass production that a quiet, almost invisible mistake slipped through. A mistake that would become one of the most famous double die errors in modern coin history. For those unfamiliar, a double die error happens during the process of creating the dies used to strike coins. When a die is made, it undergoes multiple impressions from a hub to fully transfer the design. If those impressions are misaligned, if the die shifts even slightly between strikes, it can cause a doubling effect in the design. When that die is used to strike coins, the result is a doubled image, often most noticeable in the lettering or numbers. That's exactly what happened in 1995.AT. The Philadelphia Mint, a batch of dice used for striking pennies, was improperly prepared. They were given a second hub impression that was slightly offset from the first. The error wasn't caught. The dice were installed on the coin presses, and thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of pennies were struck with those flawed dice. To the casual observer, these error coins look normal. But to a trained eye, or someone paying just a bit more attention, the difference was striking. On these 1995 doubled die pennies, the strongest doubling appears in the word liberty and the motto, "In God We Trust." The letters appear doubled, almost shadowed, like an echo frozen in copper. The date, however, remains sharp and clean. That contrast, clear date, doubled motto, is one of the key signs that you've got something special, collectors started noticing. And fast. Unlike earlier doubled die coins, such as the famous 1955 doubled die cent, which was relatively scarce, the 1995 doubled die was more available. It wasn't exactly common, but it was findable, especially in the mid-1990s when they were still showing up in pocket change. At first, these error pennies sold for a few dollars. Then tens of dollars. Then hundreds. As awareness grew, so did demand. More and more collectors wanted one. And as higher grade examples were discovered, coins that had never been touched, never circulated, preserved straight from bank rolls, and the price skyrocketed. That's when it happened. Point 1 Pristine, mid-state 1995 double die penny, graded MS69 red, virtually flawless, hit the auction circuit. The bidding was intense. This was the best-known example of a modern error that had captured the imagination of collectors nationwide. And when the gavel finally fell, that 1-cent coin had sold for $4.46,000. Let that sink in. 1 penny. One tiny, copper-colored coin, worth less than a stick of gum, sold for more than most luxury sedans. And the most incredible part: that coin didn't come from a safe or a museum. It came from a coin roll, a forgotten bank bag, a pocket. It was born in a machine, ignored by inspectors, and carried in circulation for who knows how long before someone realized what it was. That's the thrill of coin collecting. That's what keeps people searching through jars of change, rolls of pennies from the bank, old dresser drawers, and forgotten boxes in the attic. Because somewhere, maybe even right now, another $46,000 penny could be waiting to be found. Let's talk about what you should be looking for. First, if you're searching through 1995 pennies, focus on those minted in Philadelphia. This will have no mint mark. The double die error occurred only at the Philadelphia Mint. Denver minted coins, marked with a small d below the date, are normal. Now examine the obverse, or front, of the coin. Use a magnifying glass, a jeweler's loupe, or even a macro lens if you have one. Look at the word Liberty to Lincoln's left. Are the letters thickened? Doubled? Does it look like a faint shadow is echoing each letter? Then look at "In God We Trust" across the top. Is there a doubling effect there, especially in God and Trust? If so, you might be holding something worth far more than face value, but be cautious. Many coins show what's called machine doubling, where the metal shifts slightly during the strike, causing a flat, shelf-like doubling that's not valuable. True doubled dice show rounded, crisp doubling, like two distinct impressions layered together. Condition is key. Even a circulated 1995 doubled die penny can be worth $20, $50, or even $100 depending on where. But the real money is in uncirculated examples, especially those that still shine red, the way they did the day they left the mint. Coins graded MS65 or higher are highly sought after. MS68 or MS69. That's elite. That's where the big money lives. But there's another reason why the 1995 double die cent holds a special place in collectors' hearts. It came at a time when modern error coins weren't often taken seriously. For decades, The most valuable coins have been older ones, coins from the 1800s, early 1900s, rare mintages, silver and gold coins with long histories. But the 1995 double die was different. It was modern. It was accessible. It felt possible. Suddenly, everyone realized that rare coins didn't have to be ancient. They didn't have to be locked in vaults. They could be found in the very next handful of change.it. Changed the game. Coin collecting saw a resurgence in the late 1990s and early 2000s, in part because of this penny. It got people interested again. It sparked conversations. It led to YouTube videos, magazine articles, eBay auctions, and community groups dedicated to finding the next big error coin. And guess what? That excitement is still alive. People are still finding 1995 double die cents today. Not often, but enough to know that the hunt isn't over. Enough to know that your penny jar could be hiding something incredible. Imagine the feeling that you're sorting through a pile of change. You pick up a penny. You glance at the date, 1995. No mint mark. You flip it over. Nothing special on the back. Then you look at the front again. Liberty. And you pause. Something looks off. You look closer. The letters seem thick, shadowed. You pull out a magnifying glass. In God we trust. It has the same strange doubling. Your heart starts to race. Could it be? You pull out a digital scale, 2.5 grams, right on target. You compare it to another 1995 cent. The differences are clear now. You've seen the photos. You've watched the videos. You know what to look for, and then you realize you might be holding a $46,000 coin. It's not just about the money, though. It's about discovery. About history. About connecting to a tiny moment in time where something slipped through the cracks of a massive system and became unique.